And here we are, the spoiler room. It's Jaws July here in the spoiler room. We're covering all 4 Jaws films. Why? Because I'm a completionist. We did Jaws last week for our Over the Hill special. I turned 50 and so did Jaws. And so I'm like, yeah, there's 4 weeks in July. Let's cover all 4 Jaws films. Yeah, I forgot the other films. So I forgot our film tonight. I shouldn't say that. I did not forget Jaws 3. I did forget about Jaws 2, except for how it ended. That's the only thing I remembered about Jaws 2. And tonight, yes, folks, we are talking about Jaws 2 from 1978 because, you've got the first blockbuster. So, of course, the studio's going, you know what we need? A sequel.
More of the same.
Not,
but not quality wise.
I've got my Jaws 2 soundtrack in the back here. I do have 3 of the 4 soundtracks. Surprisingly, they never released Jaws The Revenge on a soundtrack on vinyl. Who would have thought that?
Until I saw John Williams' name pop up, the beginning of the movie, I'm like, is this a Harry Manfredini scored movie? I was getting Friday the 13th vibes, and they don't stop there, man. This is Jaws as a slasher.
This is we'll get into all of that in a minute, but thank you everyone for venturing down the stairs, pulling up a chair, and popping your favorite beverage with us as we talk movie spoilers. And tonight I've got a great crew with us. First off, he is the man, the myth, the legend himself. Mr. Joe Randazzo is with us. How you doing, Joe?
Hey everyone.
And we also have, you'll probably agree, reviews own Mike Crowley is with us back in the spoiler room. Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Hey, happy to be here.
Good to hear you. And my right-hand man who will be coming back for more, Mr. Ian Simmons, will be joining us in a little bit. He had a little bit of technical issues. So, yes, Jaws 2, 1978, because, Jaws, which is the grandfather, Jaws is the grandfather of the Blockbuster. So why not have the grandfather of the Blockbuster start the trend of studios going, we need to do a sequel? And then people
it happened before that, but this is definitely one of them that, they jumped the shark with it.
It's like there's like 40 Bowery Boys movies. So.
No, I'm not saying sequels were new, but at the same time, it's just funny that, the trend of just Jaws 2. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like, okay. And this is only 3 years because it took a lot longer back then to make films, but it's only 3 years after the premiere of the first one. So, they cranked this out fairly quickly. Relatively for the age. And yes, and Mr. Ian Simmons is with us. How you doing, Ian? See,
I'm good. We're talking Jaws 2, so I wanted to represent a real movie with my Jaws 1 t-shirt.
I like your shirt.
Oh man, if you didn't like this one, I've got good news and bad news for you.
No, I've seen 3 and 4. And I maintain that they are light years better than Jaws 2.
Really?
Oh, nice.
It's been a while for me, so I'm revisiting these. But from what I remember as I was running them down to a friend of mine earlier, was Jaws 2 was good. Fuck, was I wrong? Jaws 3 is bad. Jaws 4 is ridiculous, and then there's the Italian semi-sequel that's barely a movie, but it has a Hulk Hogan look-alike, so that's...
Yes, there is that. But
yeah, I was going to tell you, the good news is you never have to watch Jaws 2 again, probably, as far as I don't know. I don't know if there's any situation in your life where you ever got to watch this again. But I was going to tell you, it also only gets worse from here, but it seems... I don't know if you've watched them more recently, but I
know, and here's the thing, and I know we're going to talk about them, coming up, but at least Jaws 4 is as terrible as it is. It's terrible in really interesting and creative ways. Whereas this, we'll get into it, but I was fascinated watching Jaws 2 because I kept reminding myself that this is before modern slasher movies. People always talk about Halloween, Friday the 13th. No, Jaws 2, which came out 4 months before Halloween, introduces all of the slasher movie tropes that we come to know and love, minus the nudity.
We were just saying that right before you came on.
We were just saying.
As my internet connection went down, so I had to restart. So I missed the entire conversation.
No, but we were saying that exact thing.
It wasn't much of one.
No. So, Joe, since you just finished it, literally, give us a synopsis of Jaws 2.
So, Jaws 1, you got Brody, who is the only person that seems to fucking know what's going on, and everyone tells him he's crazy and he needs to shut up. So, Jaws 2 is about Chief Brody, who's the only guy that seems to figure out what's going on, and everyone tells him that he's crazy and to shut up. That's what this movie is in a nutshell.
It was very much like a generic sequel where they just repeat the same plot of the first film, except they do it poorly. There are some parts I actually kind of found interesting, like when everyone thinks Brody's crazy, he actually kind of has an episode where he does go crazy in front of everyone and he's waving the gun around and shoots at them, and then when he loses his job, I'm like, okay, so they're actually exploring it, like, oh wait, what if it actually is him or it feels like it's him? But then, of course, it kind of loses that whole aspect when they have the electrifying ending with the teenagers, the forgettable teenagers in the end.
We'll get to the electrifying ending, but yeah, this is a wild movie. Do you remember when you first saw Jaws 2? I mean, because you probably had seen Jaws first. Did you watch them in order? Did you remember seeing Jaws 2 ever?
Yeah, it was 4:30 this morning.
Oh, really? Had you not ever watched it before?
I'd never seen Jaws 2. I'd seen Jaws 3, 4, and the original, I think in that order in my lifetime.
That makes sense. I could see that, yeah.
And then I finally got around to watching the second one because we're talking about it tonight, and boy howdy. Wow.
Mike, what about you? You remember first time you saw this?
I've never seen Jaws 2 before because everyone always told me throughout my life, well, the sequels are terrible. So I thought, well, why would I want to watch the sequels? The only horror series that I watched all the way through were all the Halloween films. But of course those sequels are terrible, but they're fun bad. I mean, I especially like the one where I don't like it as a film, but I love the one where Michael Myers is actually being possessed by a cult. And like at one point someone gets killed by a washing machine where like their head explodes. And I'm like, okay, that was pretty interesting. But yeah, this movie felt like you could find this on a random VHS shelf in a Blockbuster.
Yep.
And that's pretty much the amount of relevancy it has because it just repeats the same things, where no one believes Chief Brody. The mayor is still a jerk. And why did they know? One plot hole that really kind of went through my head is, okay, after they killed this great white, why did Brody still live there with his kids? Like, if I was that dad, I would have said, we are getting out of here. This place is not safe. But he stays sheriff there, and then when another shark thing happens, that the mayor does the same thing. What happens after the end of the film where it turns out Brody was right? Is there a huge controversy with the mayor? Do they actually decide to permanently close down the beaches there? Because obviously we don't know how many sharks are in there. Like they could have explored that. They didn't do any of that. They just ended with, kill the shark again in the end. And that's why it bored me. It was just generic. You could tell they wrote it in a hurry. It was directed in a hurry. I mean, especially though the reason Jaws worked was because like the way Spielberg framed the scenes and he edited the scenes, they held on certain shots, like when Jaws pops up and Brody's throwing out the fish and he says, "Calm down, try to chop some of this shit," and then it like jumps up. Like that works because it's at the background of the frame and he's at the forefront. Here the movie just relies on frantic cutting to build tension, and it shows why the movie doesn't work because it's not Spielberg's eye, and without him you're just going to get cheap knockoffs.
And I mean, this director is known mostly, I think, for television, so that's and Supergirl.
Oh, that explains a lot.
And Santa Claus the movie. Come on, guys.
I've never seen Santa Claus the movie.
Sorry, Santa Claus.
You've never seen Santa Claus the movie?
No, I have not.
I Highly recommend watching Santa Claus the movie.
It's going on my Christmas list.
It's essentially Superman, but with Santa Claus, and it's great. And John Lithgow is amazing.
Really?
As the villain.
I've never seen it, so I can't comment on it.
During an era when John Lithgow was always villains.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I mean, that era never really died. He just ended up being the dad on Third Rock from the Sun. Yeah. Everything else he's done, he's a villain.
He's a villain, of course.
Yeah.
Well, it's John Lithgow, Joe, what about you? First time you saw Jaws 2?
I don't remember the first time I saw it.
No.
I do remember I didn't dislike it as much as 3 and 4. So the only one that, and we'll get to it in 2 weeks, Jaws 4 was my first Jaws movie, and 7-year-old me was terrified that sharks apparently could stalk you and follow you, because I'm like, we go to Italy all the time. What if one of those sharks follows me? We'll talk about that in 2 weeks.
Well, what's funny is
that was 7.
The thing is, watching Jaws 2, there's at least 2 or 3 plot points in Jaws 2 that show up again in Jaws Revenge. Not the main thing is that theory of a Jaws following you. I thought that first cropped up in 4 with the mom, with his wife saying, "Oh, the Jaws is following our family. The sharks are following our family." Brody mentions it, and I forgot about, because the only thing I ever remembered about Jaws 2 was the ending. I remember Jaws with the burnt face because of the explosion. So Jaws goes around with a mutilated, another slasher trope. Your killer has a mutilated face. But I also remember how he kills the shark at the end with the electrical cable. Those are the only 2 things I ever remembered from Jaws 2. But watching it again, there's a moment in the dialogue where Brody asks, "Hey, could a shark, because of echolocation from dolphins, could a shark send out a signal to call other sharks if it was in trouble?" He says this, and I'm like, oh my God, Jaws 4. Literally Jaws 4. He's thinking this shark is calling other sharks for revenge. And I'm like,
I'm just imagining a horrible sequel now where Brody somehow gets the power to communicate with sharks. They really want.
That's our legacy sequel.
CGI him.
Roy Scheider's still alive, right?
No.
Oh, did he pass?
Oh, a long time ago, yeah.
Ah, well, never mind. Oh, Dreyfus is still alive.
Mm-hmm.
Dreyfus is buried. Yeah. Oh,
he's the only one.
He's the only one. Yeah, I think. Yeah, still alive. So, but yeah, Jaws 2. You know what? Here's the thing with Jaws 2, and I was describing this to my buddy because he's a big Spielberg fan. He loves Jaws. And I said, "Oh yeah, we're covering Jaws 2 for the podcast tonight." And he's like, "I'm sorry." But what's funny is last week we talked about all these things that Spielberg doesn't do that you normally expect with a beach film or a film like this, a slash film. Everything that he didn't do, they do in this movie. This is I don't remember, Ian, I don't remember this film being this horny. This entire movie is freaking horny.
Well, I mean, there was some of that in Jaws 1 because, and they recall it exactly like all the other stuff that worked in that movie and doesn't work here. Lorraine Gary, her Mrs. Brody character, says, to Martin, "Hey, you want to go fool around?"
That part,
right?
I'm fine with.
Right, but the problem is that Jaws, the original movie, worked because it was about adults. And real fears around families and thinking things through, and there's a whole Oceanographic Institute angle to it. It's a very smart film. This movie focuses on and stays with the teenagers to the abandonment of everything else, because it's what this movie is setting up is, somehow this guy's still mayor and he's in cahoots with big business, and they're going to open up this kind of oceanside resort hotel. You're like, oh, wow. So they're going to get tourists in here even more. And there's going to be more shark danger. But no, the whole hotel resort thing completely evaporates because we spend the entire last 30 minutes of the movie with these damn kids out on the water, like trying to get to the lighthouse. I'm like, what is this film? I don't know what this. Sorry, again, it's not a film; it's a movie.
I think it was also trying to make a statement about women in the workplace, because you have the little subplot with Brody's wife being apparently looking in the beginning like she's some big part of this big development, but then whenever hon, go get us coffee. She's basically brushed off like that, and I think it was trying to make a statement, but I just watched the movie. I just finished it 20 minutes ago. I don't remember how that gets resolved.
It doesn't. I mean, none of the adult story. It's not even a story. It's just set up for something that we never see pay off, because Brody goes out in the boat and rescues the kids, and that's where this whole thing ends. And I'm like, okay, fine. It's a bunch of dead meats going out in the water. I was also thinking about the raft scene from The Burning.
Yes.
But aside from the fact that it features Keith Gordon makes an early appearance. We'd see him years later in Christine, and the actress who played I can't remember her name, but she showed up in a movie in '84 called Angel, where she was playing a teenager, a high school prostitute, but she's a high schooler in 1978. Same thing with Keith Gordon. I'm like, these kids would be like 28 years old by the time they're playing high school students a decade later. I don't know what's going on, but aside from the one character who looks an awful lot like Ned Beatty did in Superman the same year this movie came out, I couldn't tell you what was going on. They all look the same. They talk the same. They act the same. It's a horny movie, I guess, because there's people making out kind of in the background, but I couldn't tell you whose drama meant what. They're all just meant to be flung around the water.
Yeah. And the problem with Jaws, too, is that it does the problem that like all the Jurassic Park sequels did, which is you have boring characters. The most interesting character in the movie is Brody, and that's just a legacy character from the first film. I don't think legacy character was
and aside from a couple scenes where he goes completely insane, which he didn't in the first movie, he's got the same arc.
Yeah.
You're not really covering any new ground with him. You're just kind of putting in different pieces that match.
But and when I say horny movie, I don't mean horny as in a Cinemax at 11 p.m. on a Saturday night type of movie. I mean like every character in here, because we're following the teens. I don't know who wrote this script, but they haven't been around teens, because I know teens are hormonal, but not this bad. Literally every dialogue of our characters in here is them trying to hook up, like everything, like their entire universe is set. Every single teenage character.
Mark, when was the last time you were a teenager? I know modern teenagers, because it's something in the water, they are not interested in sex.
Right.
But the 1970s and 80s, are you kidding me? There's a reason sex comedies were a thing. It's not because no one could relate.
Very true. You're right. It's a thing of the times. I remember being a teenager in the late 80s, early 90s. I'm just thinking of my kids as teenagers, definitely not taking after their father in that respect, thank God. But the
screenwriters here, there were three apparently. Peter Benchley is credited as both the original story and the screenplay, along with Carl Gottlieb and Howard Sackler. Carl Gottlieb was a writer on the first Jaws and also The Jerk.
Yeah.
Howard Sackler, what else did he make? Killer's Kiss in 1955 for Stanley Kubrick. Stanley Kubrick's Fear and Desire. Peter Bogdanovich's St. Jack. The Great White Hope.
This was a cut and paste. This was literally they wanted them to do a sequel because they're hot off of Jaws, Blockbuster. We gotta strike while the iron is hot, so to speak. So they do Jaws to it. We'll just get another shark, and this time we'll focus on teenagers, and we'll still get John Williams to do the music, which I'm like sitting here going, John Williams didn't actually compose any music. I swear he took music he didn't use from Jaws 1 and just said, here you go. Use this.
That's exactly what it sounds like.
Yeah, because like the music at the beginning does not build tension at all. It's kind of like this lighter melody thing, which the first one does a little bit here and there, but it was during the more adventurous scenes, not when someone's swimming underwater and they're at risk of being killed by the shark.
And that first shark attack, it sounds like Harry Manfredini's Friday the 13th music.
Yeah, it does.
Which is amazing, because Friday the 13th doesn't come out for another, year or two?
Yeah.
But Manfredini was also copying Psycho's score, so maybe this is the bridge. No, I'm wondering about Gottlieb. You mentioned Joe. He did The Great White Hope. Could that be why he was tapped to do this movie? Because there's a great white shark.
Oh,
maybe someone's like, yeah, it's a great white. It's all the same, right?
It's one of the things that's really fascinating, though, especially watching these back to back, though, it shows you how to properly approach this material and how to not approach this material if you want to make a memorable film, because Jaws 2 feels like the Asylum's version of Jaws. Like if it was today, like you had Jaws come out and they're like, oh, let's do Jaws, Amityville Jaws or whatever. And
I mean,
Mark, if they could remake Jaws 2 with Shane Van Dyke in the Brody role, it would be my favorite film of all time.
I mean, the silver lining is the shark movie. Even from this, has gone down in quality to such a degree.
Well, here's the funny thing: we're trashing it, and the funniest thing is, I'm watching this, and I'm like, this is still better than most other shark movies.
It is,
because they actually film out in the middle of the ocean still.
Right.
You can tell by how often the camera's bobbing up and down. Like, if they made a shark movie like this today, it would just be CGI sharks, and they'd be filming it in a soundstage.
We have a practical shark that works.
Yeah.
And so you've got that. He's still doing the Jaws things. He just does more of it here than in the first one. Where the more is less, though, I think, for me, because after a while you're just like, okay, I don't have tension, because you're thinking, like, you get the one shot where Jaws is coming at the one schooner or whatever, the little boat that just the woman, the girl and the young kid are on or whatever, and you're like, oh, he's just going to swim underneath and kind of rock the boat, create some tension. No, he just runs head first right into the fucking boat. I
do love how over the top it gets in this film. Like, at one point, the girl pours the gas on herself, the boat just explodes. And I'm like, oh my God.
I'm like sitting there going, wait, when she first picked it up, it had the cap on, and when she picks it up,
she's Stone Cold Steve Austin that shit.
Yeah.
But talking about subplots that evaporate, there's this briefly hinted subplot of possibly the boss macking on Brody's wife, but that goes nowhere after like a little bit of a 1-minute scene where they're at the party and he's kind of leering at Brody's wife, and Brody makes a comment, and then that's it. It's poof, gone. That idea is gone. Then we go to teenagers who are trying to hit on Miss Amityville, who shows up, which, by the way, she's a teenager and Brody whistles. That was just awkward.
It was the 70s.
I know.
Let's talk about these. Let's talk. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
I should have looked at this. There's Jaws 2 deleted scenes. I wonder if it's in there. And I didn't look.
I bet you there might.
Because I mean, this movie's 117 minutes. I'm wondering if it came in like over 2 hours, and they were like, we got to cut like a lot of shit out of this because we gotta get it under 2 hours to get it in the theater. Yeah, go ahead, Ian. What were you saying?
Oh, I was saying, speaking of the 70s, in movie time, I know in terms of the film, the sequel came out 3 years later, but in movie time, it's been 4 years.
That's true.
The original Amity Beach incident. But in that
the mayor's
time,
been reelected. The mayor's been reelected.
That's what I don't understand. That was my first question: is how does this guy still have a job? But the oldest son, is it Michael?
Yeah.
Is he the oldest?
Yeah.
There's that scene where all these high school kids are sitting there in this smoke-filled bar drinking, talking about going out and partying. I'm like, I understand it's a resort town, everybody knows each other, but I mean, there's no way this kid is probably even 18, let alone 21.
Well, the drinking age didn't go to 21 till later on. We've had other movies.
What was it in 78?
And let's see, because he was in New England, right? Let's look this up.
This is better than that currency conversion thing we do.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think we're going to need to do any of that tonight because it really wasn't.
The legal. Let's see. Well, in in 78, the legal drinking age was raised from 18 to 21. In New York. Let's see. Because I've had this before, because I was looking at this and going, why are those teenagers drinking and nobody seems to be having a problem? 1978, the legal drinking age in New York was 18. It was changed in 85, raised to 19, and then again in 85 to 21. And I've looked this up before because I was wondering with some other 70s shows I've seen where high school kids are drinking and the cops are literally right there popping a shot with them. And I'm like, dude. And then it's like, no, drinking age was 18 in New York in 78. So it was perfectly normal for these kids, if they're 18 or around 18, close enough in the resort town, to be drinking in the bar.
See, I've always been of the opinion that if you're old enough to go to war, you should be old enough to have a beer. So I think that's bullshit.
And we're in Wisconsin, so as long as you're with a parent or guardian, you can have yourself one. So anyway.
I've heard that about Wisconsin. Yeah, I know it's not like I'm living in Illinois now, and I work in a bar in Illinois. Well, 1 day a week now, but yeah, even if your parents buy you a drink, you cannot.
Yeah,
have alcohol.
Wisconsin, we're different. We're just cut different. But yeah, drinking it.
I think you're the drunkest state in the union, aren't you?
Yes, we are.
That would make sense. I have a vacation home in Wisconsin, and man, they really serve you up.
I think it was the top the top 25 heaviest drinking counties in the U.S. Wisconsin has 20 of them.
Yeah. Every time I close out, they're just like, "Are you sure?"
Like 18 or 20 of them. We have a lot. We have a lot.
Christ.
It's that German Polish blood. But no, with Jaws 2, it's interesting because I'm watching this going, you should have tension because the shark works here. We've got that little vicious look at him because he got the burn. He's chasing people, a water skier. He's terrorizing this kind of boat crew of teenagers. I'm like, everything about this film, I'm like, there should be some more tension here. But it shows you the difference a director can make, because in this one, there is no tension with the shark. We mentioned it with it being a slasher. Even some of the early slashers had more tension than Jaws 2. It was like, almost like we got too much Jaws. You know how in the other one, Jaws was used sparingly. In this one, he's there constantly.
Well, it's a sequel. You gotta go bigger. You gotta go crazier.
I do remember one thing I took away from this the first time I watched it was Jaws looked terrifying in this because of the burns. And now and maybe it's because now it was on Blu-ray, so it's a lot clearer, and I could see how fake the shark looked, and that might be why. Maybe seeing it on my little TV in my bedroom when I was like 15, it was like, oh shit, this looks terrifying. But now it's like, oh, that is so clearly an animatronic shark.
Yeah, I mean, the shark looks terrible. I mean, in every shot, it looks cheap. I mean, it looks like straight up paper mache in some of these things. It's really bad.
There are some shots where you can see like the fin wobbling
while
it's floating in the water. I'm going, wait, like I can just imagine the guy under the thing being like, oh, sorry, and they just let it in.
And I mean, once again, the most terrifying thing is when you're not seeing it and it's attacking someone.
Right.
The one kid that starts getting whipped around, I'm like, that still works. I think that, I mean, directors get a bad rap a lot, and I also, this isn't Steven Spielberg, which isn't to say that Jean Schwartz, if I'm pronouncing the name correctly, it's not to say that the director isn't necessarily talented, but probably doesn't have the pull that Spielberg would have to say, listen, I'm going to do this the right way. Fuck what you think. This director probably didn't have that. And it's like, no, this is what you got to. I want it in 15 days, and that's that.
Yeah.
And that could be the situation here.
I thought about that while I was watching the movie or along those lines, because it looks like, and I don't know the production history of this, but we do see a lot of shark in this movie, which implies that they finally got a Bruce that worked in that 3 years, right? So I wondered if Spielberg had this Jaws, would Jaws have been different? because the whole story is they used what they could because the shark wasn't working half the time. If they had a fully working shark, would his instinct have been to show that shark as often and as in these more dynamic ways that we get here? I still think Jaws would have been a better movie because the characters are stronger. It's shot, beautifully. It's its own movie, even if you take the shark away from it. But if there had been more shark in it, would we have thought of it as more of it's a kind of a passable, elevated horror movie that we wouldn't be necessarily be talking about today because it'd just be too much?
It's possible.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's very possible. I had kind of thought about that as well.
Yeah, so, I mean, the legend goes, the reason they showed restraint was because they had to. So who knows?
And those moments, like if we had like 16 shots of the shark going through the water, then that moment, Mike, that you mentioned about the chumming scene, no one would have cared because that's like the first or one of the first like really good looks we get at this thing, and it also looks really realistic. So that's another factor, but. Yeah.
Spielberg's kind of a brilliant director where maybe he still would have made a good movie, but not as good if that animatronic did work all the time. Because, I mean, before he made Jaws, I think his first directorial debut, I don't think it was Sugarland Express. I think it was Duel.
But Duel was for TV. Sugarland Express was his first like theatrical film,
But Duel was scary because you never saw the truck driver. It was always just the truck. And it was kind of like he kind of put in the same thing with Jaws. But I think if he didn't learn from that, Jaws wouldn't have been what it was. But yeah, the animatronic worked. It probably would have been an okay movie, but not what it was.
Yeah.
Well, and I was just looking some things up too while you guys were talking about it, just real quick here, and it explains a lot. John Williams was forced to start working on the score before the film was completed. The one guy who, again, I'm not kidding, folks. This film. We're not over exaggerating. This is just a basic slasher film with horny teenagers, because literally one of the lines that I guess the guy improvised, "She has tits like a sparrow." Apparently, the actor David Elliott said that he regrets ever letting those words escape his mouth. Apparently, Roy Schneider did not want to come back either to the film, but he had recently left the production of The Deer Hunter, which led to conflicts with Universal Pictures, with whom he was locked into a multi-film contract with. The studio agreed to forgive his leaving The Deer Hunter if he did this film, which they would count as the 2 remaining films of his contract with them.
He could have been in one of the greatest war movies ever made. He left it and ended up in Jaws.
What role was it? Was it De Niro's role?
I'm guessing. I think it was. Yeah.
Wow.
But
that
completely different movie. If you don't have to die knowing.
This film, and then the one little bit of trivia, we'll get back to it, but the one bit of trivia is the film cost $30 million to produce. Jaws 2 cost $30 million, which was 3 times the budget of the first one.
Just goes to show you, throwing more money on it is not the answer ever.
Apparently it cost $80,000 a day to make the film. And they said they were basically spending all the profits from Jaws 1.
Yeah, it just shows you, like, they make, like all sequels do today, they try to up the scale, and it doesn't make the movie better. I think some of the best sequels I've seen are the ones that actually kind of pull things back a bit. A little thought about Superman that I have with it, which I won't say anything about, but
I haven't seen it yet, so
we're but well, I mean, just look at everything with Jaws too. You could tell they were trying to just do more. They're like, oh, we got money now. We got the working shark. We can do more, and Spielberg is like, a sequel is just a carny trick, which is hilarious because he'd go on later on to be making all kinds of sequel. Thanks, Spielberg. You kind of ate those words a bit, but
he can't taste the words because the money's in his mouth. Yeah,
but this I mean, this isn't. This is truly one of those definitions. It's funny because we see it all the time now. So here we see the early goings of a studio and producers going, we've got to do a sequel. We're going to make more money with a sequel, not realizing that nothing in that story. I mean, the shark literally blew up. So you have to get another shark. So now you literally have the lines of, wait, there's another great white shark in New England oceans. But this time they don't even play the environment angle, like say oceans warming and the shark coming up, which they would do later in 3, I think they mention it, or 4 they mention how the shark actually travels up higher because the water is getting warmer. But in 2, they don't even play it that. No, Brody hints at, oh, are they using echolocation for a shark in trouble to call other sharks? And so that's the one connection of Jaws 2 to Jaws 4. You know what the other one is? Jaws taking out an aerial vehicle.
Yeah.
In this one, Jaws takes out a helicopter in 4, which we will talk in a couple weeks.
Immediately when I saw that helicopter, I'm like, is he going to like jump out of the water and grab it? And someone's going to have to get it away with the shark repellent, you know.
Do freaking mega shark attack. Yeah. No, it just, well, what was kind of, what made me laugh, I mean, I found amusement. Don't get me wrong. I know we're slamming this film, but I mean, there's some entertainment here. It's just, watching it back to back with the first one, it is so jarringly different that it really makes it tough. But one of the things that made me laugh out loud was at one point, folks, Brody takes his boat out to find the kids who are on their boats that have been kind of trashed by Jaws. So they've tied them together. And so Brody finds them. So he throws a rope out to them to get the kids, and they tie it on and they're getting ready, and all of a sudden Jaws shows up, as he knows, and they do this thing where Brody's driving away fast because he panics with Jaws, and Jaws does this almost comical bite of the rope. It looked like it was from a cartoon, like he was like and then Brody runs his boat into the electrical island. Cable Island, they call it.
Well, that's the whole problem with Jaws, is that you see where the plot's going to go from frame 1. Like immediately when they bring back Brody and then there's another shark, you're going, oh, he's going to prove the whole town that he's right again. And when you have that, there's nothing really to hold on to or care about, especially when the teenagers are just disposable and boring. Like even like Brody's own son is in danger of dying, but we don't really care.
Yeah, I couldn't give a shit.
Yeah. So,
well, and all the, there's a group of kids at the end at the lighthouse. One of them gets eaten, I think, right?
Yeah.
But not as many as you would think in that
not as many.
Meat.
No, but Brody's young kid, after Jaws 1 and now Jaws 2, is going to need some serious therapy, because he's there in that boat and that guy gets munched literally in front of him by Jaws. Like the kid's there and the other team's swimming up, and then Jaws comes up and just nom, like right in front of the kid. And I'm like, oh, damn, and yeah, it's funny because we see more of Jaws, but for some reason, the motivation of the first Jaws makes more sense than this one. Mm-hmm. His attacks here feel far more random, and maybe it's because there's more of them. Maybe this is the prime example of less is more, because in the first Jaws, they talk about, they set up it's territorial. Oh, he made it into here. It's territorial, and he sees something as a threat. He's going to go after it. In this one, the shark just shows up and starts beating the shit out of boats for, and yeah, we think we've got the same thing. Brody, people don't believe him, even though he shows the picture. I do love that scene.
That scene I thought was kind of silly. He just sees like a fish's eye, and he's like, that's him. Like, how can you tell? There's like a lot of fish that look similar. Like that was the one time when he's like talking to the council and saying, I'm telling you, it's the shark. I'm kind of like, yeah, I probably would have agreed with the council at that point. Although I still I would have probably believed in Brody though, because I saw Jaws 1, and anyone who lived in that community knew what happened.
Well, and they all acknowledge it's like, yeah, we remember what happened a few years ago, but are you sure this looks like seaweed to me? I'm like,
It doesn't look like seaweed, though.
That doesn't look like
Yeah, it looks like a fish's eye.
Yeah, it's definitely a fish's eye. I mean, there's also the like it took a bite out of a whale, which is
Yeah. There's the killer
another
whale
terrible looking animal effect. That was straight up school project nonsense. Wow.
It reminded me of the museum diorama we had back in the day when they made the big dinosaur wing in the Milwaukee Public Museum, and they had the one with the T-Rex in the open side with him chowing on the guts of a triceratops, and it looked real. It kind of looked like that. It didn't look too. I didn't think that.
So it looked as realistic as a museum exhibit in Wisconsin from 1985. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Yeah. I didn't think the shark. I didn't think the killer whale carcass looked too bad. For me, it was one of those things where watching this, I was finding entertainment in it because I like some of the attacks he made, like going after the water skier. I thought that part was done pretty good. I like that. I'm like, oh, is he actually going to catch up to it? And I'm like, damn, that's a fast shark, because that boat is cranking. But I liked that bit because that felt more like from the first one. Because we don't see everything of the Jaws. We've got her, and then we got Shark Cam, and then we get up close, and then all of a sudden we just cut, and then we see the handle in the water dragging behind the boat. And that felt like from the original. But then we get the gasoline pouring and the exploding. And
there was one legitimate scene that I thought was kind of scary when I think her name was like Tina, and there was Eddie, and they're out in the middle of the boat, and then Jaws attacks it and kills Eddie. Like Tina starts yelling, like, "Go away, please go away!" And they just like cuts to the water, and it holds on it for a bit. I thought Jaws was gonna pop up. I was kind of cringing at that moment, but outside of that, the rest of it just felt bigger and louder, and dumber, and less coordinated.
Actually, that part actually works well because later on, Brody and his wife are out on the boat with the cops, even though he's been fired. He still is going out to rescue his kids. They come across the boat and he finds her in shock under the boat. And that little scene too, I really liked. I'm like, I need more of these beats.
Yeah.
But it literally, I mean, the shark is constantly showing up, like reminding you, hey, this is called Jaws 2, and I'm the star, and I'm going to be on the camera the most.
Instead of relying on interesting characters like the first film had between, Richard Dreyfuss and, I'm forgetting all their names, so screw it. But
Robert
Brody. Shaw,
yeah.
and Brody, like all those guys, that was interesting. Here the movie's like, oh, you're bored. Here, more shark. Oh, okay, you're bored still? Put in more shark. It literally is, you guys, it's a generic thriller where you're just marking time for people to die rather than caring about what's going on in the plot.
Yeah, I mean, it's telling when, on the first movie poster, you've got, Roy Scheider, Robert Shaw, my gosh, Richard Dreyfuss. And Jaws 2, the names are Roy Scheider, Lorraine Gary, and Murray Hamilton as the mayor. It's like a big drop off.
Which they even reduce his role because you have the development guy in there. That's where I'm wondering how much hit the cutting room floor, because you've got the mayor kowtowing to the development guy. He's on the board. He's like at the head, and the mayor's like off to the side. He's just like, yeah, Brody, no, Brody. Yeah, no. Yeah, no. It's like,
yeah. To be fair, they couldn't exactly bring Robert Shaw back.
Well, no.
Yeah. He kind of died.
Well, but I mean,
I'm his twin brother.
But Robert Shaw, his part in Jaws was, I'm going to be bold here, 30% performance, 70% writing. He's great in the movie, don't get me wrong. But the Indianapolis speech, the dynamic of how that character was written is a masterstroke. And we don't. You could have done something like that with the mayor character in this movie if he had been at the. We catch up 4 years later. He was run out of town practically and disgraced after allowing all that stuff to happen, which is what I had expected to happen. And maybe he gets some kind of a redemption arc when he goes out with Brody because he's the only guy in town for some reason who can go out on a boat with him, and they figure it out. Maybe he sacrifices himself or something.
You just came up with a better Jaws 2 than we have.
Yeah. That's better than...
Well, again, it's the less. I mean, it boils down to less is more. It really does. With the Bruce, and we talked about it last week, with the Bruce breaking down so much, they had to make up for it in other ways. Get creative with your cameras, not always showing the shark. You had to have John Williams create a theme, which later on he would also create, the Imperial March, which people don't have to watch Star Wars. They know that song. The Jaws theme. They don't have to see Jaws.
Oh, we lost Ian.
They know that
Shark
song. Shark got him. So they had to get creative, and they had to put more in for the characters because they couldn't put as much shark in. Here they put more shark in, so it took away from the characters, because the first Jaws is about those three characters. You first have Brody, and then you have Brody and Dreyf, and Hooper, and then you have, Quint, and then it builds up. But it's really those three against the shark. Even though you've got other characters, it's just those three we focus on. Here you have camp counselors against your killer.
It was a whole community of boats that he was going after instead of just one boat hunting the shark. Although, in fairness, if they just did the one boat thing again, it would have been a little too redundant. Although the movie's already redundant itself. So,
but that's the thing that I feel like people who make these sequels never seem to understand, because even when you're watching, different sequels to slasher movies, ultimately what makes the movies work is that you have a core group of characters that you can relate to in some way. The worst ones are the ones where everybody's just cannon fodder. And that's what this movie is. Like, you don't give a shit about anybody here. It's just Roy Scheider's movie. And I'm wondering if that whole thing about the sharks being able to communicate with each other, that was just a line to just be like, fuck you for trying to get out of the deer hunter. We're gonna make you look like an idiot.
Hey, Joe, I just cracked the sequel by making an actual carbon copy of the original. My idea, you've got Brody going out there, you've got the disgraced mayor who's now a raging alcoholic like Quint, and your Hooper character is the deputy who's going along anyway.
Or
the
you could
kind of
even
fish out of water, if you will.
Or you could even have the very brief appearance of a shark expert female scientist who came out to measure the bites and disappears. We don't talk to her again. Did you notice they even bring up Richard Dreyfuss's character in dialogue? He tried calling, Brody called because he came into the house when the mayor didn't believe him. This was just before he got fired. He comes into the house and his wife goes, Hooper called. He wanted to know what you wanted. He's out in the Arctic and he won't be in communication for like 4 months. And Brody goes, oh yeah, I put a call into him. And it was like a call back to that. I'm like, why did you even throw that in?
Because they're going to try to get Richard Dreyfuss to come back for 3, and they want to make sure he's still alive. And I think that's all it is.
We're going
to get him for this one. We're going to get him for 3, though.
Well, it'd be great for part 3 if Matt Hooper shows up in Amity and the shark's already been blown up because he didn't get the memo until after. I'm here. It's funny with the whole Brody character. It reminds me of, it's either Roger Ebert's rules for film or Mad Magazine, but there's a term that I saw decades ago called an Akwat-Nobi. It's an initialism that stands for a cop with a theory no one believes in, and that's a staple for all these horror movies. And that's definitely Brody in this one. But you don't know why he should be the mayor of this town at this point.
He is the crazy Ralph at the same time that he's the hero. Yeah, and it's weird.
It is
It's
weird.
supposed to be two characters.
I mean, it would have even worked a little better if he was one or the other. Say he was Crazy Ralph, who keeps seeing sharks where there aren't sharks, and he's living on the edge of town, and his wife divorced him, and his kids are gone, and you've got Brody. You know, you could play the angle of, oh, your hero of the first one. Yeah, he's just a kind of crazy, a disgraced guy in this one living on the edge of town, and the mayor humors him, you know, or whatnot. But then he ends up, you know, then he could end up getting his redemption going, no, the shark is real, and then coming after him. You could even play it that. There's a lot of opportunities here that they don't take, and that's, I think, the most frustrating is that
I think it's because they were just lazy.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
I mean,
Just go with what worked before.
Again, there's a lot of potential for this to actually be a really solid sequel. Unfortunately, they took such a lazy route, and we've seen so many slashers since then, and even a few before them, but especially after. You look at this, like you guys said, Halloween came out just after this. This has a same formula this time as a slasher. The first one was a suspenseful, you know, hunter, hidden killer type of thing. Like, you're not quite sure when he's going to strike or not. And in this one, it was just like, oh, it's 10 minutes in, he's going to strike again.
I'm still hung up on this Crazy Ralph idea. I want to see Roy Scheider riding around Amity on a bicycle with a little pork pie hat and a black vest, just saying, "You're doomed."
I mean, that's what he was in this. He's like, "You're all doomed."
You know what you need with that?
And I will shoot you if you disagree.
You know what you need with that? A shark tooth necklace. He needs to be wearing a shark tooth necklace.
Oh God!
You've got disgraced Brody who's seen sharks everywhere. He wears a shark tooth necklace. He's shirtless. You know, he's always talking to, you know.
That's the scene they'll put in the legacy sequel if Roy Scheider was still alive. He gives the necklace to his son. And he's like, "It's up to you now, kid."
Yeah, he's got PTSD, post-traumatic shark disorder.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, during that helicopter scene, I don't know if have any of you ever watched, and it's very fuzzy and hard to see, but not hard to find, unfortunately, the Twilight Zone, the movie set footage with Vic Morrow and those two kids. Have you ever watched that?
The helicopter decapitation?
Yeah. When that helicopter, when those blades started like coming towards those kids and they were screaming, I know this happened like 6 years after this movie or 4 years, whatever, but I was having these weird flashbacks to that moment. I'm like, that looked really perilous. I don't know how they shot that, but it was wild. And I'm surprised that it didn't. Well, I shouldn't be surprised because Jaws 1 would have killed those kids, but Jaws 2, I'm like, they'll be fine.
Well, what's even more funny is that the Jaws pulling the helicopter into the water and the blades flying randomly at them is probably one of the only really intense, actually, holy shit moments in this film with the shark pulling it down. That actually felt like legitimate danger. Like, oh man, because the blades are just flying everywhere. They tear through the sails or whatnot, but none of the kids get hit. You would have liked it. I know it sounds horrible, but maybe see one of them kind of get nicked or something by a piece, you know, because then you emphasize the danger of what just happened. But instead, no, it just rips up their sails.
Yeah. Jaws was fine. How did he not get turned into canned tuna?
You do get the one girl that got nicked by the shark and dies, though.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, she doesn't actually get bit. The skin of the shark's so rough it just cuts it.
Yeah, it just rips her open.
Yeah, so there's that, you know, and yeah, this film, you know, it harkens back, and I know I've quoted this before, but in a interview that they did with that Kevin Smith did with Bruce Willis after Live Free or Die Hard. It's on the behind the scenes stuff. It was on YouTube. He interviewed him and he talked about Die Hard 2. And this was, you know, this would have been 10 years later. And he's like, or, you know, 12 years. And he's like, they still didn't know how to quite do sequels. I mean, we've talked about, you know, oh yeah, they did sequels in the past. But if you look at sequels in the past, they were kind of their own story, like In Like Flint and Flint, they're their own, they're the same character, but they're a completely like separate story. Or James Bond through the years has really just been his own story. They're maybe loosely connected, but they're never really direct sequels. If you think about it, there are very few direct like big movie sequels. I mean, yeah, you did have, your series, but those were more done like serials. Here you have a direct sequel.
And the only one I can think of is Frankenstein, actually.
Yeah.
Because Bride of Frankenstein is
right.
a continuation of the first story.
But look at how long
Godfather Part 2.
But if you look at that gap of like 30 years or so, I mean, so Hollywood was, I shouldn't say they weren't used to it. They weren't used to the concept of sequels. So kind of in a way, Jaws kind of spawned this sequel idea.
It's not that they weren't. It's not that they didn't really know about them or really know how to do them. It's just they were kind of looked at as, as something that's.
Why would you? Yeah.
Yeah, almost like a curse word. Like, oh, you want me to do a sequel?
Right. Because they wrote those stories without the idea of an actual sequel coming. It was always one and done. This is the only chance we're going to get to tell this story.
But I mean, you also have to realize we're talking about a time where there was no real home media to speak of.
True.
So if you were to do a continuation with the next movie, especially in the 30s or 40s, you had nothing. You didn't even have TV.
Right.
But then when you get to like later on the 60s and 70s, you don't have VCRs yet. You have TV, but you have to luck out and catch the movie, the first movie before you go see the next one. So I mean, now in the age where like literally all I have to do is keep a subscription going forever, you can keep knocking out these sequels and continuing the story. And if I see such and such 3 came out, well, I haven't seen 1 and 2. The same streaming service probably has 1 and 2, and like that's the thing. That's why they, in the old days, you didn't even have the same actors sometimes, or the same actors coming back in different roles sometimes, which was odd. But that's just the lack of home media.
I mean, you talk about this movie. I mean, Jaws was a monster hit, no pun intended. But the average movie, if it takes 3 years to come out with a sequel, and you don't really have a way to catch up with it without jumping through several hoops, and by the way, catching it in a movie theater somehow. It's like, audiences aren't going to remember or connect with the material necessarily. That's something I haven't really thought about to the degree we're discussing it here. But yeah, it's fascinating.
Well, it came up because we were doing some old Universal movies on literary license a couple years ago, and one of the hosts was like, "It's odd that you're seeing Lionel Atwill as this character in this one, and this character in this one, and this character in this one." I'm like, because nobody was going to remember 5 years ago, the last time they saw a Frankenstein movie, they were not going to remember the minor parts.
Right.
They remembered the major parts. You remembered the stars. You didn't remember the secondary characters.
Well, and especially in that, with the original Universal monsters, people remembered the monsters.
Yeah.
Maybe one character besides the monsters, but as long as you had the monster, you could put whoever you wanted around the monster because people came for the monster. If you look at it with the first Jaws, yes, we have the shark, but unlike Jaws 2, the shark isn't really your main character. He's the catalyst for things. He's there, and he sparks actions, but not like in Jaws. Jaws 2, the shark is your main character.
Yeah, and I think the other thing it's missing is you don't have the chemistry that you had with Shaw, Scheider, and Dreyfuss. You're missing that, because when you got the 3 of them together, even if they were just bullshitting while drunk, it was an interesting scene.
Which they did do in the movie too.
Yeah.
And that's why when they're showing each other scars. Yeah. You're actually like, oh yeah, this guy
Whereas the conversation, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, Mike.
You're good.
But yeah, where is that in this movie?
The most conversations you have are between the teenagers.
And it's
teenager dialogue.
Yeah,
it's all shitty dialogue.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but Mike, you brought this up earlier. There's that one scene where Brody and his wife are talking on the couch after he's been, let go, and he's kind of talking about like, I've never been fired before. I don't know what to do with this. Does this mean that I'm, bad at my job? And then later when he comes, he's talking, or maybe it was earlier, but he comes in and the deputy's talking to her, and they like raise a toast of, Jack Daniels and talking about this, and like, you're going to be the new deputy. And then he's like, they're still going to fire him. That's a really cool scene that, again, in a real movie, you would have gone somewhere with this. I still feel like this is the first half of a serviceable sequel that could really go places, that's just spliced together with the Dead Meat Teenager movie, including like at the end where the smile you son of a bitch scene, except it's Roy Scheider holding a cable and he's talking to Jaws like it's a dog. He's like, that's it, attaboy.
Yeah,
like,
Open
wide, stay
come in. Yeah.
What's even worse? What's even worse about that is the dang setup that they talk about, because he talked to the shark expert who made the one appearance, who said, "Oh yeah, that's where the idea of the echolocation, and could they call for other sharks?" Because she mentions, sharks are drawn to sound, and that's where he dropped the line about that, which eventually would come around in Jaws 4. But in this one, he's banging on, and I couldn't understand this because, I get that setup, but the shark's got all this food around him, and he's banging on the electrical cord with the oar, which he drops at one point, and then he does. And suddenly Jaws is like, you know what? I'm going to avoid all these teen morsels. I got to go find out what that banging is over there.
Maybe that was the dinner bell.
Well, never mind that they're splashing and making noise where he's at. It's not like it was dead silent and he was banging it. Like the kids were on the island, like they had made it to the island and it's dead silent and the shark's still swimming around the island. And so he gets its attention. No, they're splashing around. And I'm like, and it's not even that loud when he's banging. Yeah. So I'm like sitting here going, why is the shark going towards the banging? That's it. Take a bite. And then he bites,
They made him too sentient.
What, the shark? They made it too sentient. And it's the problem that ends up showing up, and we will talk about it in the next 2 weeks with the other two sequels. They make the shark too sentient. Another thing
reminds me of this ridiculous scene in the 97 Godzilla where like this fighter jet is like flying around New York City and Godzilla's hiding behind a building. Like, what?
I remember that. He's hiding amongst the buildings for whatever reason, and it kind of
reminds me of that. Like for some reason, it's sentient enough to do that.
And he made a plan to like have other little Godzillas go out and invade New York, which they never followed through on.
And I think that while we don't have, obviously the shark doesn't talk or anything, but the motivations of the shark in the first one are far more scary and eerie and felt more realistic than the motivations of the shark in the second one. And that's the thing that immediately kind of declaws or detooths Jaws 2 horror element, is the fact that as we mentioned, you've boilerplated this into a basic killer movie where this doesn't have to be a shark. It easily could be kids in the woods. It could be people in an apartment building. You literally take this formula for anything. Whereas the first one, his attacks felt more realistic and more calculated. And as we mentioned last week, what made Jaws 1 work is the fact that it could happen. There are shark attacks, and the shark attacks that happen in the first one feel far more realistic and less cartoony, less your basic killer than, I at the end, instead of electrocuting him, they could have had the kids wrap the shark up and go, look who it really is, Mr. Wilson. So there you have it, folks. Jaws 2. Yes, I have Jaws 2 soundtrack on vinyl. The music isn't as effective, it is just a lesser sequel. And as we go on, you'll find they try to get creative with this, but does it work? Does it not? You'll have to tune in next week when we first cover Jaws 3D, which I do have the soundtrack to as well. As far as Jaws 2, final thought. You've seen Jaws 1. Would you recommend this, Joe?
Probably not. Because again, there's really nothing. I if you look up some stills of the shark that's like disfigured, it's creepy looking in the stills. But if you see the other side of it, like during some of the attack scenes, it takes away from it a lot. So yeah, I guess in that regard, no, I it's just the first story again. Just watch it just kept reminding me that I could be watching the first one again. So no, Mike, yeah, I don't think I can anymore.
Mike,
a week ago, I would have said, yeah, I remember it being decent, but now I'm like, no. 5 hours ago, I was like, yeah, I remember it being decent. Watch it.
Yeah, you watch it, you're like, oh no, it's not.
It might be one of those movies that got ruined by actual better picture quality because on a tiny little TV in 1996, seeing it for the first time, yeah, it was probably creepy.
TV quality, yeah, TV CRT quality, yeah, it probably,
yeah, Blu-ray quality, no.
Yeah. Mike, what about you, sir?
I will not remember this movie 2 days from now. Yeah. It's Jaws 2 has some elements I like where they kind of play Brody like, oh, maybe he is crazy and he questions his life. But then, of course, they never really follow through with that or with anything different or interesting. And it's just a sequel among other sequels that just gets lost in the sea and will be eaten up. I'm out of shark references, but no, I mean, if you don't have Spielberg, you don't have much of a film. Kind of the same thing we saw with Dial of Destiny with Indiana Jones, although he kind of screwed that up with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. But I would say that's why you don't get someone outside of Spielberg to do the sequels, although Spielberg himself isn't good with sequels. God help us if he tries to make Ready Player 2.
I'm just waiting for E.T. 2 when he comes back.
He just sees Elliot's grave.
E.T. 2 would be interesting if it ended up being like, well, it's too late now because it can't be Terminator 2 now, but that would have been interesting.
Terminator versus E.T. Yeah. I'll be right here. I'll be back.
It's like Godzilla versus Bambi. It's gonna be like 14
I love Godzilla versus Bambi. Man, when Godzilla 85 came out, I went to the theater to see Godzilla 85. I was so hyped. They had such a hype train in the US. I remember on the news they were showing some guy in a Godzilla suit actually getting off for the premiere in LA or whatnot. I went to see Godzilla 85. They played Godzilla versus Bambi because I was like, what is this?
That's a real movie?
Yeah.
Is this like a cartoon or is it
it's a cartoon.
Okay.
And it's a brilliant because it played in front of it. And I'm like, what is this? Laughed my ass off.
Look, we won't spoil it for you, Mike, but look it up it's got to be on YouTube.
It's on YouTube.
I'm looking it up right now to make sure.
I'm looking that up. I'm going to watch that tonight.
Godzilla versus Bambi is actually really good.
It's like a minute long.
Yeah, it's a minute 30, a minute 39. It is on YouTube.
Yeah, it's not that long, but Ian,
it's exactly what you expect it to be.
Yeah.
It's very hand drawn. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead and check it out later.
Yeah. I wonder if Bambi flies at some point and shoots lasers at Godzilla. I don't know.
Oh man, no, that's a sequel.
Speaking of sequels, I want to jump over the ET Part 2 and just go right to 3T.
3T.
They would just turn that E around.
3T in 3D. Mike and I had the same thought. 3T and 3D.
Yeah, when his finger points, it's just right in your face.
That finger comes right at you.
Oh, that reminds me of I think it was Meatballs 2 or Meatballs 3, the adult film Eat Me the Sextraterrestrial.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, that was a fake movie in that fake movie.
Might not be now.
Well, hey. But no, I would recommend Jaws 2 strictly as an exercise in the difference between a masterpiece and a knockoff sequel.
Mm-hmm.
But here's an even better way to appreciate Jaws 1 for someone who has no familiarity with these movies. If there's a way, I don't know if you can do this AI or whatever, but to retitle Jaws 2 as Jaws and Jaws as Jaws 2 and just say, hey, here's this shitty movie, and then the next movie is the prequel, which is amazing.
Oh, there you yeah. You can do it that way. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a terrible film. Most of the fascination of watching it comes outside the context in which it was released. Kind of like the young actors who were in it, they would go on to do other things, or we can look at it now in terms of like crappy sequels that have come out in the decades later and talk about those. But just thinking about it at the time, 1978, as a follow-up to Jaws, it's awful, and there's no reason to talk about it. But there is reason to talk about it in this meta context.
And yet we still talked about it tonight for over an hour. So thank you. For Jaws 2, it's okay if you haven't watched the first one. I mean, the problem I had with it, again, rewatching it, was the fact of there's so many interesting kind of nuggets of ideas that never go anywhere with this. And it falls back to, we haven't seen the shark in 10 minutes. We got to bring him back. Like we said, there is a wonderful moment in the Brody house after he gets fired. That's probably the most character scene you will get out of this entire movie, is that scene after he got fired, where he's talking to the deputy. He talks to his wife. He's talking about questioning because he's never been fired. There's actually that character moment. That's the only character moment you truly get in this whole film. That's it. Otherwise, it is your basic slasher with a shark, unfortunately. And there's a lot of stuff that doesn't go anywhere till at the end. You're just like, wow, you even ended it in a similar way. I mean, he electrocuted him versus shooting the air tank, but you pretty much got this same exact thing.
Well, we already established that this Jaws is better because it got blown up at the beginning of the movie and it survived.
That's true. That's true.
It's better than the first shark.
It's better than the first one.
Yeah. It's the Jason shark.
It's a Wolverine shark.
I'm surprised.
In this case, the explosion didn't even hurt him. It empowered him.
Yeah. Now that would
That's
be
the
cool.
Frankenstein angle. It gave him that surge of electricity.
Yeah.
No, but Mark, something interesting. Like this movie is robbed of character moments, but it apes one of the coolest little moments from the first movie, where Brody and his youngest son are sitting at the kitchen table, and they end up like kind of mimicking each other.
Mm-hmm.
They do that. They recreate that scene here where Brody's picking up the bullet shells on the beach, and his son comes over and he's like looking. I'm like, no, you don't get to do that. Just stop.
Well, and me being the gamer that I am, Brody was making the bullets that he used in that one beach scene where we talked about, where he goes nuts and just shoots at bluefin, a whole school of bluefin. He made these special bullets with little wax, and he put the chemical in the hollow tips and
with the holy water.
Forgot what the chemical was, but he was putting it, and he put wax, and he was hiding it for whatever reason that he was making these special bullets. I'm like, why are you hiding the fact you're making special bullets to possibly kill sharks? What? No one cares. You're just making bullets. People do that. But yeah, that bugged me too. But yeah, so there's a lot of things that are going to end up bugging you about this sequel. But will we feel the same about Jaws 3D? Well, that's going to be a sequel that's going to have all other different points to it. Just by slapping the 3D at the end. But we'll cover that next week. So thank you so much, everyone who tuned into our live stream today. We had a number of viewers. I appreciate every single one of you, and my panel here, where now I give them the license to shill. You can shill whatever you would like. So Mike, Go ahead and go first.
Sure. So you can check out all my stuff at ypareviews.com, where I have written reviews of the newest movies that are coming out. I have a podcast where we talk about pretty much any classic we want to, tied around a certain theme. And I'm also do like reaction videos to movies I've seen. Like I did my reaction to Eddington, while my written review is also up there. And my TikTok is at YPA Reviews Chicago, and everything else from Twitter to Facebook to all that other good stuff. I don't know. I'm old. I can't remember all my social medias.
You're old.
You can find me at YPA Reviews, and the YPA Spencer. You'll probably agree. I think I plugged that name enough now.
You're old. Oh my god.
You're probably the youngest one of the four of us.
Probably.
I'm turning the big 4-0 in a few months.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I wish I was still turning 4-0. Joe, you got anything to plug?
Not at the moment. So
Okay.
a couple weeks the next episode of Last Drive-In, but that'll actually be in tune with this because it'll be aquatic horrors, but we'll get to that in a couple of weeks.
Sweet. Very cool. Ian, what you got to shill? License to shill is yours.
Well, I'm Ian Simmons. I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com. And I'm also right here on YouTube with the Kicking the Seat YouTube channel. We do weekly roundtable reviews. And this Wednesday, it's going to be Fight Night. Earth's Mightiest Critics are going to be talking about Superman 2025. So I anticipate a bloodbath. I anticipate, I don't know, perhaps severed relationships. I'm not sure, but I'm gearing up. I'm doing my homework, and I'm coming ready to defend one of the greatest cinematic masterpieces of all time. Sorry, I almost got that out without
you almost convinced everyone.
I was going to say, was there a second viewing that you enjoyed more?
No, and there shall never be. Anyway, that's me. That's what I got.
Well, there you have it, folks. Please check out all my wonderful guest panels stuff. If you're at all interested, specialmarkproductions.com for all your Movie Man needs. Subscribe, bells and whistles to all my wonderful panels stuff. And here as well, we're trying to get to 5,000 subscribers before the end of the year. We're getting close already. We've started to pick up steam again. And more importantly, if you're at all interested, there's a short interview I happened to do with Peter Weller, which I have to plug. So you should check that out. That was very interesting, very fortunate to get that opportunity. And I'm very fortunate to get the opportunity to talk every week with wonderful people like this. So thank you so much, folks. And until next time, we'll just say a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
There was even no